So obviously before you do that, whatever you should go back and modify whatever you need to modify. If there's like something that was off with shape or something like that I mentioned in crit, something you want to look at obviously before texturing it, UV it or tweak your UVs if that's not already done, and then go through and texture it. So you should have something that's like a custom texture for your oven. If you want to do that procedurally or if you want to do that in Photoshop, I don't really care. But I am expecting something more than just sort of different materials with random slider values on there. And if you guys want to use, like, I have totally no issue with you guys using textures from textures.com or something like that. Just be aware that they'll probably need to get modified at least a little bit to look correct or like more refined on your final model, if that makes sense. And also just throw your object into your scene and render with whatever the most up-to-date lighting is from both your day and your night lights. And that's pretty much that. So in terms of texturing, I do expect probably you're going to end up needing maps for multiple different channels, so like color, roughness, bump map, or displacement map. Whatever makes sense, but it should look pretty much like whatever your final object is supposed to look like. These are supposed to be final textures. So I'm not implementing any kind of like you must have 3 channels mapped, but it should look like a complete realistic object and just kind of do as much as you need to achieve that effect. Apparently I said I might get rid of this requirement because it's kind of silly. Nope. Cool. But yeah, so any questions about the texture part of that assignment? All right. And I also have, set up a turntable with your hero object in it and render every 25th frame of that turntable. So I'll go over how to do that in a few minutes. But yeah, so this is setting up. So next week, week 8, you guys are actually going to be rendering the full turntable out. This is just sort of a proof of concept to test out your lighting, see how that looks, test out camera angle and all that stuff before you waste a bunch of time rendering like 700 frames of something. Get a little bit of feedback on it first. All right. And then for the turntable, so like I said, I'll go over, I have videos on the YouTubes where I actually just like specifically go through and like show you guys how to set up a turntable, but I'll go through it in class again. For the turntable itself, here's a list of, here's the linked tutorial for that YouTube. I do have certain expectations. So for whatever you do for your lighting, there shouldn't be any areas of your object that are like completely black to the point where you can't see them, or so blown out, white, overexposed to the point where you also can't see them. I also expect your object to be sitting on some kind of platform. So just like, imagine that you have a little spinning display case for like a action figure or something like that. Like he has to be sitting on something to spin. He can't just like magically spin while sitting directly on a table, if that makes sense. So put like just some kind of, it doesn't need to be crazy fancy, just like throw it on some kind of little like circular base or platform or like something that kind of makes sense for whatever object you've done. And also, in addition to that little platform or display table, please also put in walls and a floor. If I see this particular assignment, if I see like a plane just sort of floating with an object on it floating on an HDRI, I'm going to take off points for that. So if you could put on, again, just a floor and some walls in the background, you can still use an HDRI to light your scene. I just don't want to see the HDRI floating around in the background. Or the Maya Void, either one. As usual, you should, if you want to use a dome light, totally fine. Just make sure that you put, if you're going to use a dome light, put an HDRI in it or something, so it's not just a white light. They don't give particularly flattering lighting, and they really don't show off detail in objects at all. And then just some like technical stuff for how the thing should move. It should move at a constant speed, and the animation should ideally loop seamlessly. I'll go over how to do that again in class. And also, if you could just make sure your object rotates around some kind of logical central pivot. so it's not spinning wildly into space and like going half off the camera view or something crazy. Any questions on the turntable bit of that? All right. In terms of what to submit, zip of your Maya project folder if you could, including the 3 renders of your object, all of your textures, Maya files, and reference images that you used, and then also the partial turntable renders, which should go in like the images folder where you put the rest of your renders. Also, if you could just do me a favor and drop, pretty much from now going forward, if you could drop a note in the submission text when you upload your assignment, just let me know if it's a high or low poly assignment, because every once in a while something's like, it smooths almost to a point where it's supposed to be smooth, but it's still like a low poly. It's meant to be low poly, but it like almost smooths well, so it's like kind of confusing. But yeah, so that's pretty much this assignment. Any questions on that? All right. Like I said, I do have this little link here where I just made like a little bit about like how to set up a turntable, but I am going to go over that just really quickly in class in case anyone has questions to ask about that.